Hello, and welcome to the channel Drift Story. Relax and enjoy this tale, The Red Coat. It was a strange time in New Orleans. The nights felt longer than usual. The streets, wrapped in mist and lit by flickering lamps, cast trembling shadows across the cracked walls of the old French Quarter. Elisa Moreau, 27 years old, spent her days in the small bookstore she ran on the corner of Chartres Street. The shop was modest. Its shelves bowed under the weight of old books with tired covers, steeped in the scent of yellowed paper and forgotten secrets. Elisa loved that place. To her, it was a kind of refuge, a bubble untouched by time. Everything began when one of her regulars, Mr. Beauregard, a retired music professor, confided that he'd been having strange dreams. Distant memories were resurfacing, accompanied by whispers barely audible. "It's like someone is murmuring in my ear," he told her, his voice trembling. At first, Elisa thought it was simply age catching up with him. But when another customer, a refined woman in her 40s, mentioned the same phenomenon, a quiet unease began to stir within her. Day after day, new visitors stepped through the door, speaking of recurring dreams. Each described buried memories and forgotten faces, rising as if from the fog. But one detail unsettled Elisa more than the rest. They all spoke of a voice, soft and low, emerging from the depths of their sleep. A voice indistinct, yet persistent. Soon, Elisa herself began to dream. The first ones were simple. She saw her old house again, the swing tied to a gnarled oak tree. Then the voice appeared, a faint whisper, as if someone were calling to her. It was threatening, but it carried something uncanny, a feeling of ancient and inevitable truth that lingered even after she woke. The nights in New Orleans became uncharted territories. The mist rising from the Mississippi seemed eager to cover everything under a veil of darkness. Elisa Moreau, her eyes shadowed by fatigue, could no longer find peace in sleep. Each night, the dreams grew more vivid. Memories from her childhood resurfaced, interwoven with visions of narrow alleys and crumbling houses long abandoned, where stray cats darted across her path. But always, the voice was there, distant, like a whisper carried by the wind. One night, the dream changed. Elisa found herself standing in a deserted street, lit only by rusted lamps. The mist drifted above the wet cobblestones. In the distance, a silhouette began to take shape. A man dressed in a long red coat stood there, motionless. The vivid red of his coat contrasted eerily with the gray and black tones of the world around him, like a stroke of blood on an ancient canvas. Elisa felt a dull anxiety rising inside her. Yet she couldn't stop herself from moving closer. As she approached, the man tilted his head slightly, his face still hidden beneath the shadow of his hat. He whispered something, a phrase that seemed to hang in the air. Like a fading echo, the words were not entirely clear, but Elisa could feel they carried a heavy burden, a truth she couldn't yet grasp. She woke up suddenly, her heart pounding wildly. The dream had felt so real, so tangible, that the whisper still echoed faintly in her ears. When she spoke about it to her friends, she discovered that others had seen the same man. Their stories were identical. The red coat, the shadowed hat, and that mysterious whisper that seemed to speak directly to each of them. New Orleans, with its damp streets and wrought iron balconies, hid mysteries behind every weathered wooden door. Whispers about the man in the red coat spread like wildfire. In the smoky bars of Bourbon Street and the shaded tea rooms of the French Quarter, conversations turned again and again to the stranger who haunted people's dreams. Elisa, however, couldn't stay still. The obsession was eating away at her. She had to uncover the man's identity. She began asking the locals discreet questions, listening carefully to rumors and half-told tales. In a small shop on Royal Street, run by an old woman with twisted fingers, Elisa bought a talisman said to reveal the intentions of spirits. The old woman told her the story of the bearer of truth, an ancient legend no one believed in anymore. The man in the red coat, she said, appeared during times of great confusion, when an entire city was drowning in doubt. Elisa's search eventually led her to Lafayette Cemetery, a maze of crumbling mausoleums where the past seemed to wander among the graves. There, she met an elderly man sitting on a bench, smoking a pipe. He claimed to have known the bearer. According to him, it was neither man nor shadow, but a reflection of the collective regrets of the townspeople. He only speaks the truths we're too afraid to admit, he murmured, his eyes fixed on a weathered stone angel. Elisa felt the mystery tightening around her like a heavy fog. She roamed the city day and night, searching for clues in deserted alleys, abandoned churches, and forgotten hotels. The man's presence felt almost real, yet always just beyond reach, like a cold breath of air. Soon, her dreams grew darker. The whispers turned into accusations, unsettling truths that shook the townspeople to their core. The entire city seemed trapped in a quiet psychosis, and the man in the red coat stood at the center of the storm. Eliza was more determined than ever. She knew that to understand this man, she would have to dive even deeper into the heart of the city and face the truths she had long buried within herself. Elisa's nights became journeys through a world that felt both familiar and strange. New Orleans, seen through the lens of her dreams, had transformed into a distorted version of itself. The streets stretched endlessly, the buildings leaned inward, and the lamplights cast mischievous, shifting shadows. Yet always, the man in the red coat waited, motionless, under a flickering lamp or at the corner of some forgotten alley. One night, the dream took on a sharper clarity. Elisa found herself in an abandoned garden deep in the heart of the city. Ivy crawled up the crumbling walls, the stones were blanketed with moss, and the withered trees whispered secrets long forgotten. The air was heavy, thick with that damp, ancient scent unique to New Orleans. There, beneath the pale glow of a crescent moon, the man stood still, his hands tucked into the pockets of his red coat. Elisa stepped closer, her heartbeat quickening with every pace. "Who are you?" she dared to ask. Her voice echoed strangely in the silence. The man did not answer right away. Then, in a low, almost melodic voice, he began to speak. His words weren't a conversation, but a continuous flow, a litany of memories. He spoke of moments from Elisa's childhood, scenes she had long forgotten or pushed away, a lonely sorrow by the riverside, violent arguments between her parents, the heartbreak of a first betrayal. The man's words did more than summon memories. They carried a raw, almost painful truth. A chill crept through Elisa's body, as though the dream itself had become real. She realized then that his words weren't mere recollections, but hidden truths, the kind one keeps even from oneself. When she awoke, Elisa felt drained, as if she had crossed a barren desert. The revelations of the man in the red coat haunted her, replaying endlessly in her mind. Every word seemed to carry weight, an eerie resonance that lingered long after waking. Her dreams had grown more vivid than reality itself, and she now understood that the man wasn't there to comfort her, but to force her to confront her own demons. Elisa had become a stranger in her own city. New Orleans, with its columned houses and wrought iron balconies, now looked different, fragile, as if reality itself were starting to crack. Each dream left behind a lingering unease, a subtle distortion, like a clock that no longer struck the right hour. The words of the man in the red coat echoed endlessly in her mind, pushing her to question everything she thought she knew. Desperate for answers, she began searching for proof of her memories. Elisa visited the places from her dreams, like the old house of her childhood, now abandoned, with the swing still hanging from the great, gnarled oak tree. She found faint traces of her past, chalk drawings on crumbling walls, remnants of forgotten games. Yet other details she remembered so vividly simply didn't exist. A window that had never been there, a room too large to fit within the house. That dissonance between dream and reality began to wear her down. In an effort to understand, she delved into the city's archives, digging through records, yellowed newspaper clippings, birth certificates, and letters from former tenants. Each document she unearthed confirmed some of the man's revelations, while making others even more confusing. She discovered, for instance, that a boy she believed to be a figment of her dreams had actually once lived in her neighborhood. He had vanished mysteriously years before, his memory erased from the collective mind of the neighborhood. The townspeople themselves seemed caught up in a frenzy of self-exploration. The entire city pulsed with a nearly tangible tension, as if everyone were trying to untangle the threads of their own lives. But Elisa had begun to wonder if the man in the red coat wasn't a manipulator, someone or something capable of twisting dreams to plant doubt. Each night, her dream darkened further. The man's whispers turned into judgments, his words bending and contradicting themselves. Reality itself began to warp as Elisa tried to piece everything together. And as her certainties crumbled, she realized that the mystery of the man in the red coat was far more complex and far more disturbing than she had ever imagined. New Orleans lay suffocating under an eerie, almost supernatural silence. The city seemed to hold its breath, and the shadows that stretched along its narrow alleys grew thicker, heavier. At the edge of her sanity, Elisa decided it was time to end the nightmare. One final night, one last confrontation with the man in the red coat. This time, the dream took her to a hidden garden in the old quarter. An abandoned courtyard no one seemed to know existed. The red brick walls were overrun with black ivy and strange nocturnal flowers, their violet petals glowing faintly, trembling with the slightest breath of air. The moon, shrouded in tattered clouds, cast a dim, spectral light. The air was so dense, Elisa could hardly breathe. Beneath an ancient, gnarled oak, the man in the red coat awaited her, standing tall and motionless, like a statue frozen in time. When his eyes finally met hers, she felt dizzy, an unsettling sense of splitting apart, as though the very fabric of space were tearing. "Who are you, really?" she asked, her voice tight, almost pleading. The man was silent for a moment, before answering softly, but with an intensity that echoed through the entire garden. "I am what you have created," he whispered. "I am your fears, your regrets, and your deepest hopes. The entire city gave me life. Through its lies and its unspoken truths, I am nothing but an echo, a manifestation of your collective thoughts." His words struck her like waves crashing against the fragile walls of her mind. And then she understood. Man wasn't real. He was a living mirror, reflecting back to each person their own distorted truth. Elisa stepped back, overwhelmed by the unbearable weight of revelation. The fog thickened around them, and the man in the red coat began to fade, slowly dissolving into the night breeze. "Don't forget," he whispered before disappearing, "you carry your truth within you." When Elisa awoke, she felt an immense emptiness, a hollow absence that pressed down on her chest. The dreams of New Orleans had ceased. Its people were left alone, face to face with their doubts, illusions, and choices. The city exhaled at last, but a strange melancholy lingered in the air, as though every street and every house still held a fragment of the red-coated man's mystery. And Elisa, gazing upon those now unfamiliar streets, understood that truth is never simple, never singular, but can dissolve quietly into the shadow of a dream.